Sure thing. All right. So, first off, I hope all of you guys are here because you're real estate investors. If not, you probably straight into the wrong place. Um, but today we're going to be talking about analyzing a deal. I do apologize. You guys are guinea pigs on this. This is my first time presenting it in this format, but I do think it's going to be pretty beneficial. The one thing I would suggest is that you guys maybe have a calculator handy. We're not going to be doing tons of calculations, but it might help you just to look at the numbers. And I'm someone that I love muscle memory. So if you could type in some of those things and then realize and see the calculation and run the calculation yourself, it might stick a little bit more. Everybody learns different ways. And so that's just one way to learn. Also, maybe grab a piece of paper. I think it might be something that you'd want to just jot notes down as we are going over this. But I do promise to respect your time. And so I am going to do my best to keep this to an hour presentation. And then we will have some Q&A time beyond that if you'd like to stay for that. But also feel free to ask questions as we are running through everything. Use the chat box. I do have that chat box open, so I will be able to see that as we go. But let's start. So we're going to be, I've done a few other presentations, and I don't know if any of you have been here and heard me speak before, but I have done some other presentations here with Real Estate IQ. I have been a part of that company just as a member, utilizing their resources, as well as I've worked with them on their education side now for the last year and a half. A little bit about me. I do have a degree in finance. I started flipping back in 2009. I right now am working on my 60th flip, which if you do the math, it's not that impressive. I've only been doing a few flips a year, but that's just kind of the way I go, and that's the process I take because I want to be very hands-on. I'm not looking to create a flipping juggernaut, but you can see that I was able to go full-time. So I was able to quit my job just after 2 years. It's a little bit easier starting back in 2009 than it is today, but we're starting to see the market turn a little bit more favorable toward investors again, making it a little bit more of a buyer's market. You can see that I've done flips, rentals, Airbnbs, and then I started as a lender. So I am a hard money lender, full disclosure, but we're not really talking about hard money lending today. We're talking about deal analysis. But I have been working for the lender that I was using in 2018 and have been with them all the way through. Last year I closed 40 million in loans. This year I am right now at 51 million, and we got 1 month left to go. But some things we're going to be talking about. We're going to be going over some terms, some key terms to know. We're going to be talking about how to find properties. And then a bulk of today is going to be on analyzing specific deals. I have 4 deals. All of them are from this year, so they're recent deals. 2 of them are actually active deals on the market that you might be able to pick up depending on the timing of this. And then finally, some tips on how to sell, and then we will have a Q&A at the end. I will let you know, the chat box has disappeared for me when I went into screen share mode. So I am not sure if I will be able to see your questions as we're going through, but I will do my best to stop every so often to try and see if any new questions have arisen. I'm trying to see if there's any. Nope. All right, just trying to see if there was any way that I could see the chat box while on here, and unfortunately I'm not able to. But key terms to know are going to be the ARV. This stands for the after repair value. I actually think it's pretty important that I can see the you know what, you guys are just going to see all of the nitty gritty on here because this is the only view that I'm able to still see the no, I can't see the chat box here either. Sorry, give me 1 second. I do apologize. Here we go. All right, I was able to, I believe now I will be able to see the chat box as we're going. But ARV, I'm guessing most of you probably know what that is. That stands for the after repair value. Yeah, perfect. I think I can even go back into presentation mode. Yep, perfect. I can see the chat box. So if you do have questions, please put them in there. So ARV, that stands for the after repair value. That's not what the property is worth now. It's what the property will be worth after we have fixed it up. Something to be aware of, especially when you're talking to an agent or you're looking up the after repair value yourself. The after repair value doesn't mean the best maximum value that property can have. It's after you do your repairs, what will the property be worth? And that's something that sometimes gets lost, because I can pull up for somebody else and figure out what the best possible valuation, if they fix it up completely, would be. But I really need to know what is their plan for that property to come up with the true after repair value, because it's after those specific repairs have been done. And that's just something key to remember when you are trying to figure out that number. The MAO or MAO, that stands for maximum allowable offer. That would be how much we are going to set for ourselves to offer on this property. What is the limit? How much profit essentially are we willing to give up to get the deal? Next is ROI. So a lot of these you can see are acronyms. This stands for return on investment. You probably hear about this a lot. It's normally an annualized rate. Return on investment. The way we're going to be looking at it is going to be just based on the specific deal as we look at ROI throughout this presentation. So based on that one deal, money going in, not money going in, profit versus the whole project, what is the return on investment? COCR, or cash on cash return. To me, this is sometimes a more important, especially as a hard money lender. This is a more important number to note. Out of how much cash I put in, how much cash should I get back on top of my initial investment? It's different than the return on investment. Return on investment takes total expenses versus profit. Your cash on cash return only considers the amount of cash you put in versus your return. And so when you're using somebody like a hard money lender, your cash invested should be a lot less, making that cash on cash return quite a bit higher. Expense. So it's good to know what is going toward equity versus what is going toward expense. If you have to put a down payment on a property, that's not an expense. That's going toward your equity. So when at the end of the day, you want to make sure you get paid back that down payment, but it wasn't an expense. It was just a cash out of pocket situation. That honestly could be going through the accounting of doing flips. And just so you know, we are looking mostly at flips today, not rentals. We will have another class on rentals later. But expenses and just understanding the flow of money, the accounting of money, is probably a whole nother class in itself. And if anyone is ever interested in that, we can definitely do something like that. Gross profit. So your gross profit is going to be utilizing just the hard costs. And when we say hard costs, typically in the terms of flipping, we're talking about your purchase price and we're talking about your repair budget versus the after repair value. So those are the purchase price and repair budget are your hard costs. Your gross profit is taking those and subtracting those from your ARV. That would be your gross profit. Your net profit is going to include all the soft costs. So you have hard costs and then you have soft costs. Soft costs would be your financing charges, your holding costs, your property taxes, your utilities, insurance, all those other smaller items that will add up. If you were to add those in removing from your ARV, that's what will get you to your net profit. And then finally, exit strategy. So there are a lot of different exit strategies, but exit strategy basically means how are you going to divest this property? Are you going to actually keep it as a rental? Are you going to flip it? Are you going to try and owner finance it? There's a lot of different exit strategies. Primarily today, we're going to be looking at just a straight flip, but it is something to note. The more exit strategies a property has, obviously, the less risky it will be for yourself. So where to find deals? There's a lot of different ways to find deals. The MLS hasn't been a great source over the last few years because it's been such a buyer's market that you're competing with retail buyers on the MLS, and that's just not something you can do. But right now, a lot of buyers that are looking aren't looking for fixer-uppers. And so that gives us investors opportunities to actually buy some properties that are distressed from the MLS. So that is a great way. Next is advertising. Can be a little more costly because and it can take a little more time, but it'll yield some of the best deals out there. Probably the best deal that you'll be able to get out there. How do you advertise? Well, Real Estate IQ offers a lot of lists, so you can sign up for a service like that. You can get a list of borrowers or of sellers or people, homeowners, and you can market to them via postcards, letters, door knocking. You can just go knock on their door. You can even call them or email them. With the skip tracing that Real Estate IQ offers, you can get a lot of information about the people that own these homes and advertise them to them in multiple different ways. Next is wholesalers. That's where you let somebody else do the marketing. Somebody else will take all those leads. They will find the deal. They will go ahead and take a profit, and then they will turn around and sell it to you. It's not going to yield as much of profit for yourself, but it does allow you then to cherry pick on the deals that you want and to not have to deal with the advertising. Just know that it will diminish your returns. And then finally, probably one of the best one is word of mouth. Make sure everybody knows that you buy houses. I know people sometimes can get a little tired of seeing those "we buy home" signs on the street corners, or sometimes people will put it on their car. I get that, but there's no shame in the game. If you're out there buying homes, let people know about it. Make sure people know that you are looking to buy houses. So now we're going to get into the meats and bones of everything and why we're here, which is analyzing a deal. I will say all these deals are going to be in the Dallas-Fort Worth area just because that's where I am. These are the deals that I see day in, day out. And these are all actual deals. Not all of them are deals that I have lent on. This first one is, but these are all actual deals. We're going to look through the process. On this one, we're going to actually look and see exactly how this one played out. On some of these others, they're still active and looking at it. But what we're going to do is first figure out, okay, we find a property. Let's say we sent out a mailer, and that's actually how this one came about. This person sent out a mailer. I believe they're a Real Estate IQ member, not positive. And they found somebody who was willing to sell. This was a house where the person had passed away, and they were able to find the children who now are in charge of the estate, and they were able to reach out to them and send letters. And so they figured out, well, there was some money owed on the property, but what did they want? And they told her $158,000. And so now we need to figure out, because we don't know a whole lot. Is that a good deal? I don't know. So we need to figure out what is our maximum allowable offer. And you can do that by using this formula that's on here, which is you take your ARV, you multiply it by whatever your return you want. A lot of investors use 70%. This number is kind of controversial. Some people say it should be 65. Some people, most recently, were using 75, even 80, which the higher that number is, the less return you're going to see. The lower that number is, the more return you're going to see. 70% seems to be a pretty good number. Just so you know, in Dallas-Fort Worth last month, the month of November, 71.8% was the average of what investors were doing. I wrote 34 loans last month. Of those 34 loans, the average deal was a 71.8%. So we're going to do some calculations here to figure out if this is a good deal. But to start with it, you can see the first thing in that calculation is the ARV, the after repair value. So we need to figure out what is that ARV. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a quick search I use an MLS portal. And so I'm going to put in, you can see here's the details on the property. The bed and bath didn't pull up on the county site, but you can see the square footage and the year it was built. And so I'm going to put in some criteria. I'm going to put in criteria of I think it was that 150 or 1,150 square feet to 1,750 square feet. How do I come up with what I'm going to do? I use about 20% of the existing square footage because that's what an appraiser does. So I want to look at this as much like an appraiser as I can. So I'm going to take 20% of the current square footage and I'm going to go 20% lower, 20% higher. And then I'm also going to look at the year built. I want to try and keep it relatively close. to the year that the property is in. It was built in 1985. I know it looks like maybe it was built a little bit longer, but it was built in 1985. So I'm going to set my parameters to 2005. So within 20 years. I didn't put it on the lower end because if it's older and I'm comping against an older home, as long as it's not a historical home, it shouldn't be a big issue. I also, went a full mile out in my search and I went 9 months back. You always want to be as close to the property as possible. So if you can do a half mile, great. If you can be within the same neighborhood, even better. And then you want to go back, ideally not more than 6 months. This property is in a town in Texas that is a little bit smaller. And so I went out 9 months and a full mile. And I got these results. So if you look at here, you can kind of see these are the 5 homes in the area. Some of them are a little bit newer, some of them way older. You could see that there was one from 1908 all the way up to one from 2005. I didn't spend a lot of time working on the date or concerned about the date on this one. And so I looked at their sold prices. You can see their list price, but I'm more concerned about what was the actual closed price. So here's kind of an interactive, and I'd like this to be as interactive as possible. I know you guys don't have mic privileges, so please use the chat. But if you could look and see and just kind of guess, what do you think the ARV would be based on these 5 comps? We can see that the maximum sold price was for $324,000. The minimum sold price was for $265,000. The very bottom, you can see the averages. You also might need to take into account a little bit for the square footage, but you can see the average square foot on this is 1385. So I see someone saying around 250. So that's going to be lower than even the minimum property sold for. So 250 is lower than even the lowest sold price of 265. What I normally will do is I will look at 2 things. I will extrapolate the price per square foot, which you can see the average price per square foot here is $208,000. And I will look at what is the average sale price of 287. So if we extrapolate out, I'm missing something where it shows our comps on here, and I'm sorry, that's on me, but I'm going to take the 287,900 and then I'm going to take the $208 price per square foot and extrapolate that out. And I figured that a 290, or someone else actually had just said, looking at it, at least 300,000. I think 300,000 is a very fair assumption. I use 290 because I tend to be a little more conservative in my numbers because I want to make sure I'm making money at the end of the day. So 300,000, 290, pretty dang close to each other. The repairs on this one came back at 58. This is an actual deal, so we actually had GC numbers on this. This was not an estimate. It's 58,000, and actually this deal is since now sold since I had created this, and it actually the rehab numbers came out to I think 61,000. So it's just a little bit over. And that's something to note, expect the unexpected. Something else that I did, if you look, I changed it from 70% to 72% for our calculation. And that's because that's just the average of what the average investor is getting. If you can use 70%, if you can use 65% in your calculation, even better. But what we're going to do is we're going to fill out that formula, the ARV of 290, using 72% as our rate, our hard cost ratio that we're looking at. And then we're going to subtract out our repairs, the $58,000. And if we run this calculation, that's going to get us our maximum allowable offer. And you need to make sure the order matters in this. So I'm going to take 290 times 72%. And then from that number, I'm going to subtract the $58,000. This is going to get us to 150,800. So you can see this is below what the heirs of this property wanted to sell it for. So does that mean it's time to close up shop and move on to the next property? No. You never know what somebody actually wants in a deal until you've presented them an offer. So let's make an offer. What do you guys think you would make an offer at on this deal? So we know our maximum allowable offer is essentially 151,000. But what would you offer? What would you guys start with? Low ball a bit. I agree. Um, I think 130, 135. I think those are very valid offers. Someone once told me, I didn't come up with this. Someone once told me that if you're not embarrassed by your offer, you're probably offering too much. You should be a little bit embarrassed of the offer you're having to make. And that's because this is a business. We're not a retail buyer. This person actually offered 148,000. Is that what I would have suggested? I probably would have gone a little bit lower, probably closer to the 140 mark. 130, 135 though, even better. This person made the offer of 148 and they got countered. They got countered at 152. Our maximum allowable offer is 151, essentially 15800. They got countered at 152. Would you guys take that deal? And this is a personal question. Some people might, some people might not. In this case, they took it. They took the deal at 152, which ended up being good. And we will look at it. So here are the numbers on it. Here is actually we had an in-person class at this property. The girl in the purple there is the actual owner, standing second from the left. But she did this. The reason why I say it ended up working out for her is it actually ended up selling for 298. But let's look it through the numbers and see. I don't know if my mouse is showing up here, but 290 is the possible sales price. She purchased at 152. She had 58K in rehab. Again, she did spend 3,000 over in rehab, but that's hindsight. Right now, we're looking at it as if we're doing it from the beginning. We have an $80,000 gross profit. Again, instead of she accepted the 152. So when the counter came at 152, she accepted it. Would you stall them out? I mean, if they don't have anyone else looking, and I don't know with this deal if they did have somebody else looking, if they were kind of competing with other people. I'm not sure if it's her name, Sarah. I'm not sure if Sarah had other people also looking at this deal. And so she was in a competitive bid. I don't think she was, but she ended up doing it. And so her gross profit was 80,000. So you can see the hard cost of the purchase price and the rehab minus the after repair value. That's the gross profit. But then down below that, we can see all the soft costs that were involved. She did finance this deal through us. So she paid so the possible ARV is 290. Our loan covered all 210,000 of this deal. She had no down payment in this, so there's no cash equity contribution. Her closing costs were just shy of $10,000. For the life of the project, 4.5 months, she did pay $10,000 in interest. She had around the utilities and property tax are estimates. These are not actual, but she had around $800 in utilities and around $1,600 in property taxes. In that 4.5 month period, she held the property. Here in Texas, our property taxes are crazy high. And then she did have some title closing and some commissions. You can see she only paid 4.5% commission. As an investor, if you're doing volume, you should be getting a discount from your listing agent. That's up to you to negotiate with them. But I always suggest, and that's because I have a bunch of different agents that'll list for me all at 1.5%. But you do want to sell as fast as possible. And it took her a while to sell this property. Generally speaking, how much would you hold a property? I'm guessing you're asking like Oh, okay, okay. And then you do want to sell as fast as possible, and so this is actually a really great question. Thank you so much, Fachundo, for asking this. So the question was, do you want to wait sometimes for that higher price point versus selling cheaper to avoid paying utilities or other holding costs? We're actually going to talk about that at the very end. We go over some selling tips, but that is a great question. And so you can see down here the net profit ended up being about half of what the gross profit was, which is just shy of $43,000. And the cash, but the bigger thing to look at too is the cash needed for the life of the project. So this number, that 20,776, is made up of the closing costs, the interest expense, and the utilities expense. It's only those three items. The reason being is those are the only items on here that was actually cash out of pocket to the borrower, to Sarah, who bought this property. She did have to pay her closing costs. There was no down payment, so she didn't have any cash out there. She didn't have any, well, she did have rehab overages, but again, we're doing this as if we were looking at it from hindsight, not with hindsight, but from beforehand. But if there were rehab overages, we would add those into her cash needed. And then she did have utilities. So her cash on cash return was over 200%. So she invested to 20,000. She got that 20,000 back, and she got an additional 43,000 on top of that 20,000. That's what makes up that 200% return. So essentially, she didn't double her money, she tripled her money. She turned $20,000 into $63,000. Again, that'd be her initial 20 back plus the 43,000 in profit. So this deal worked out for her. Could she have possibly held out for more? Yeah, but I think a tripling of your money is pretty good. Was it easy? No, this deal was not easy. If you notice in this picture, really quick aside on this, and then we can get moving to the next one. If you notice, everybody's standing outside. Not long after purchasing this property, she found out that it was infested with bed bugs. I did not want to go inside that house. I did not get interior pictures of that house. I feel bad for the appraiser who did have to go in, and for the contractors that were actively working on this property while we were there. This house had bed bugs. She did not know that at the time of the purchase. She probably should have negotiated down a little bit if she had known that. But that was part of the I think it cost $1,800 to have an exterminator come out, and that was part of the overage that she had on her budget. So now we're going to look at another deal. This is another deal just outside of Fort Worth, Texas, and we're going to look at it the exact same way. The asking price was $170. We're going to figure out our maximum allowable offer. So here's the criteria on the home. We're going to, again, go roughly 20% below the square footage and 20% above the square footage. And these are the comps that we get. Would you guys mind looking at these comps and then letting me know what you think a good after repair value would be? And again, we're going to primarily be focused on the very bottom line where we're seeing the average. And we're going to be looking at the price per square foot and the actual sales price. So you could take that $196 and multiplying that into the square footage, which I'm going to go back a screen really quick. Sorry. The square footage on this one is 1,368. And then you can also look at the total average closed price for these four homes, which is $260,500. So I see 285, 260. Here. So here's what so this is the slide I was missing on the last one. So you can see based on the average price, it's $260,500. Based on the price per square foot, that calculation would come out to $268,500. I try to typically go in between the middle of these numbers. And so I'm going to go with 265. So 260 was the average sale price for all those homes. But if I took the price per square foot from all those homes and put it into the actual square footage for this home, that's what got me to the 268,000. And so the 265 is just in between those two. And so that's what I'm going to use for this one. Again, I did switch it over to the 72% just because that's what we're seeing in the market right now. at least here locally. And it's good to know each market. So you can get that number to see what people are buying at by just going to meetups and talking with people and networking. So the repairs on this one were also 58,000. This one was an estimate. I do not know who ended up finally getting this deal. Can you get ARVs from HCAD? I'm guessing you might be in, well, CAD, just so you guys know, CAD typically is going to stand for the Centralized Appraisal District. They're the ones that are going to set the valuations on houses for property taxes to be assessed. I would not typically go with those valuations because most people, if they're a savvy homeowner, not just an investor, but a savvy homeowner, they're going to do everything they can to fight that valuation on the property and keep it low. My house last year, I think we were able to lower the valuation of the property, which homes are going up, but we were able to lower the valuation on our property by, I think, like $80,000. So the CAD, or Central Appraisal District, value of the house that I live in is substantially lower than what the actual market value is. It's not supposed to be that way. The Central Appraisal Districts are supposed to have your market value property amount, but there are some things that limit it. There's also some, and so I would not say that that's a great way of looking at it. The best way is really to either have an agent that has access to the MLS looking at things for you, or using a portal into the MLS. There are a couple different companies out there. Real Estate IQ is actually working on developing this as we speak. So hopefully soon that'll be something that would be included if you were to ever register for Real Estate IQ. You would have a tool that you could use to comp properties. And keep an eye out because information on that should be coming out shortly. But so CAD, Central Appraisal Districts, are not a great place necessarily to look at to find value. Does that not mean it can't be one of your tools? No, it could be one of your tools. You could even use Zillow. I know people always talk about how terrible Zillow is, and that is true in certain areas. It really depends on your market. Here in Texas, we're what's called a non-disclosure state. And I think there's only truly 8 non-disclosure states in the United States. That means that when a property sells, it is not public information. You cannot just go somewhere and find out what it sold for. You can go into the MLS, and if the agent did what most agents are asked to do, which is to put into the MLS what it sold for, if you had access to the MLS, you could find out. But essentially, the reason we do that is we don't want the government here in Texas to know how much our properties are selling for. The government cannot utilize the MLS to come up with their valuations because that's not public information. And we do this because we want to have lower property taxes. And so that's why Texas is a little bit different. A lot of states where the property taxes are higher tend to be non-disclosure states for that reason. But moving on, we're going to run this calculation. 265 times 72%, and then minus, it was supposed to be 38,000. I'm sorry, 38,000 on the repairs. This one did not need as much work. This one was almost purely cosmetic. I know it's pretty ugly from the front, but that house actually ended up just getting pressure washed and then painted. It was not nearly as bad as it looked. It was terribly rainy when we were there the day that we were in front of that house. I ended up not buying this one, but I was close to getting it. Someone offered just a little bit more than me. But so I got 152,800 as my maximum allowable offer on this deal. Again, forgive the 58,000 repairs. It was about a $40,000 job. The asking price was 170. This one has a little bit more of a disconnect on it than the last one. And to keep you guys from being in suspense, I was a sucker. I made my offer near at the top because I was so far off and I kind of wanted it because it wasn't a lot of work. It was only $40,000. I made an offer of 150. Did I get countered? No. This was a showing from a wholesaler. A lot of times wholesalers will not counter your offers. They will instead go ahead and just take whoever the highest offer was. I actually found out that the highest offer on this was $162,000, almost $10,000 over my maximum allowable offer. That would not have been good. Did they still probably make money on this deal? Yes. Assuming the 38,000 repairs is right, they probably still made money offering 162,000. But you have to then look at your time, and is your time worth it? So it did sell, not to me. And let's just look at it, look at the numbers just like we did the other one. And so we're going to run down it. So $265,000 is, this is another picture of the house. It was the backside. I know it's a different color on this one, but sorry about that. 160 or 265,000 ARV on this property. I think I used 155,000 as a purchase because at the time of creating this, I did not know how much they had paid for it. 38,000 in rehab, giving them a gross profit of 72,000. If we look down, and if they had borrowed the money, it still would have been funded at 155,000. It still would have been funded at 100%. A lot of lenders will lend at 75% of the after repair value. You can see the closing costs here. Interest expense, utilities, property taxes. Again, it's just using, and you can see actually the rates that I'm using over here on the right-hand side. So interest at 13%, utilities at $250 a month, property tax at 0.24% a month. This is going to be, that property tax number is going to be specific to Texas. Look up your state's property tax to figure out what that should be, but you will always be paying for the property tax while you hold the property. You'll have to give a credit to whoever buys the property from you. And then your title fees on the closing side as a seller, and then your commissions. I use 4.5% because that's what I get. And again, really, that should be what you're getting. So the net profit, even offering 5,000 above what I offered, still I would have made $38,000 on this deal. Would that have been worth it? I mean, that's kind of up to you. I think it would have. I probably would have done, if looking at it, and thinking that I possibly could have been countered, I probably would have done it at 155,000. Would I have done it at 162? Maybe. I've gotten a little snobby and a little picky on my deals. I like to make at least 35,000 on the deal if I can, and that would definitely have pushed it below that. But down here, you can see that I added in some additional numbers. So still the cash on cash return, which I think is very important to be looking at. It's a 200% cash on cash return again. It's tripling your money. There's a lot of work that goes into it, but it's tripling your money. That's a pretty good deal. Oh, I did not mean to do that. Sorry. But you can see the percentage of the ARV. I also like to look at what is the percentage of the ARV that I'm getting back. 15% is right around my target. It used to be 12% a few years ago when things were not as investor friendly, but now that they're investor friendly again, I want to hit at least 15% of the ARV as my profit. Any questions? We have two more deals that we're going to analyze. I just want to see if anybody has any questions at this point. And while you guys are thinking of that or typing them in, these are numbers that are all very subjective as far as what you're willing to take. I personally want at least 15% return on investment. You don't have to get at least 15%. There's no hard, fast rule. There's a lot of people that are okay out there making $20,000 on a flip. To me, that gets a little scary because one major plumbing issue, like underneath a slab, if you have a slab leak, there's 10,000, maybe more gone like that. That's half of your profit. Now you're doing this for 10,000 profit. Working this much on top of maybe another job, on top of whatever else you have going on over a 4 to 5 month period and only making $10,000. I know that sounds kind of snobby, but you also put a lot of money at risk. I don't think that's a good return. And so that's why I personally will always want to see it as close to at least 30,000 for sure, but ideally 35,000 in profit and at least a 15% return on the ARV. If I'm doing a really big deal, I want to get compensated for doing a really big deal, not just by the total dollar amount, but by the percentage of that ARV. So I'm going to move on to the next deal. This one is in Fort Worth. This is, I believe, actually an active deal from a wholesaler that I got earlier this week. The asking price is $178,500. Again, the maximum allowable offer. Let's see. I am going to move it to 72%. we're going to see that it's only 900 square feet. It's a small property. I messed a little bit with the numbers. I went 30% above and 30% below on this one, just because I was worried I wasn't going to find a whole lot of deals. And I again put in the parameters, similar parameters to that one that we started with. I went out a mile and 9 months back, again, because of fear that I wouldn't get enough returns. And I was kind of right. I only got 5 returns. And this is pretty close to downtown Fort Worth. I'm trying to remember where this one was. But yeah, it was relatively close to downtown Fort Worth. In the downtown area should be plenty of comps, but I knew that at this size I would have to go further out to try and get comps to align with this. It's actually near TCU. I remember where it is now. So you see the properties that we have here. Again, if you guys want to look and see what you would set up your ARV as, and I'm going to give you the cheat sheet of this next slide that shows the calculation for price per square foot. So that number on the right, you can see is the average price per square foot times the square footage, essentially 900 square feet on this property. And then you can also see the average sales price on the bottom left of that extra little pop-out graphic. What do you guys think you would put? This one has a pretty big spread on it. It's $45,000 from the specific price per square foot versus the average sales price. And that's because a lot of these homes ended up being a little bit larger than the home we were dealing with. So I'm going to give you guys just a second to type in what you think a good ARV would be for this one. And it's a tough one. It's some judgment calls. 315. Yeah, it's not a bad idea, because something to note, the smaller square footage you have, typically the higher price per square foot in that neighborhood you're going to see, because there's some built-in things to that price per square foot, like your lot cost. And if you have less square footage, you're not going to have as much square footage to extrapolate it out into. I see 240. That'd be a little bit on the more low end. I typically am going to have a number that's somewhere between the price per square foot of 271, 500 and the 316, which is the average price. Almost always my ARV is going to be somewhere in between there. 272. So what I ended up using is right in between there, 295. So again, what I did is I took 316 plus 270, 271, and then I average that out, and that gets me 293.5. So I'm taking the average of those two numbers. What's the average sales price for a home somewhat similar in size? I did go 30% above. And then also, what is the average using those sales and extrapolating that out to the price per square foot? So using that 302 price per square foot into the 900 square feet, that got me the 271. So I'm going to average those two, and that's going to get me pretty close to the 295. And so that's what I'm going to use for this one. It did need 55,000 repairs, which may not sound like a lot, but for a 900 square foot house, that is a lot of repairs. This was actually what was given by the wholesaler. I verified it a little bit by looking through the pictures. I have not visited this property yet. Like I said, this is a brand new property that just came up. Taking the 295, multiplying it by 72%, and subtracting out the 55,000, it gets us to 157,400. Again, a pretty big delta between this and the asking price. What I would offer is probably 155. I do know that they are firm on their price because I called and asked. They were firm on their price at 178. They are not going to lower it. They might eventually if they get stuck, but I actually called on this one before I drove out to see it because I knew that my offer was going to be 155. I didn't want to waste my time. That house is about 30, 40 minutes from where I live. If I'm going to drive all the way there and I have that big of a difference between their ask and what I'm going to offer, I'm probably not going to make that trip. So I called them just to feel out how hard are you on these prices, and they said they were very firm. That may mean that they only have this under contract for maybe even just 175,000. maybe 170, maybe they're making 8K, maybe they're only making $3,000. They could be making $20,000 for all I know. I'm not sure, but they did say that they're going to be very firm on their price. So is this a good deal? No, I wouldn't do this deal. And let's look at why. So 295, subtract out that 178,500 purchase price and the 55,000 repairs, it still gives us a gross profit of 61,500. That sounds like a lot when you're talking about a gross profit, but when you look at it and you run through all the numbers, the closing costs, there is a down payment on this one because this is above that 75% that I'd be able to get financing for. Now, again, that $12,250 down payment is not an expense. It goes into my total cash invested in the project, but it's not an expense. It goes toward my equity in the property. I do have almost 17,000 in closing costs, 9,500 in interest if I hold it for 4 months, which this one I actually probably should have done it 5 months, which would have made it even a worse deal because this one probably would need a little bit more time to go through it. 1,000 for utilities, 1,700 for title and for property tax. And then again, the 4.5% on commissions. My net profit's 17,000. My cash on cash return is 43%. It's still honestly better than investing in the real estate market where you put in $1,000 and hope to get maybe 8% on your money. But for being such an active investment, it's not a good return. And then the return versus the ARV is only 6%. That is well below my personal standards of what I want to see. Now, you need to create those standards for yourself, but I'm glad I didn't waste time going to see this one. It would not have been beneficial for me. And then we're going to look at one last deal. This one's over in Dallas. The asking price was $189. We're going to go through the calculation again. We're going to go to the 20% above, 20% below. And I did stretch it all the way out to the year 2000. I probably should have put a cap closer to 1990, maybe 1985 on the year built, but I didn't for this one. There were a lot of returns on this one. I took out the ones that I felt were most closely representative. You can see they're all within a couple years of each other from 1950 to 1953. And here are the calculations. So again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to figure out between the average sales price and that price per square foot, what's in between. And that's how I'm going to come up with my ARV. So I'm going to take the 338 and I'm going to take the essentially 301,000 and find a value that is in between those two. So I'm using the price per square foot and the average sales price. And I'm coming up with 320, essentially right in the middle. The repairs on this one were 50,000. And this is actually, well, yeah, I mean, this is one that I ended up buying. I own this property right now. So 320 is the ARV. 72% is the percentage. This is the one that's my 60th flip. So I'm ready to get it sold. It's taken a little bit longer than I wanted, unfortunately. But my maximum allowable offer based on this is going to be 180,000. Sorry about that. Not far off from the asking. We made the offer of 180. They countered just at 182. And so I snapped on it and I bought it. And so this one is right now in month 3 of the rehab. So it should be finishing up here. Unfortunately, it's a terrible time to sell, but we'll talk about that on our next slide when we talk about selling. But you can see the possible sales price of 320. I did have an overage on rehab. You can see here, and that's just because I am looking a little bit on hindsight of this one. So the overage was 6,000 and I had 50,000 rehab. So my gross profit still, even after my overage so far, is 82,000. You can run through again all these numbers. I am holding this one longer, 5 months. It just needed a little bit more work. It's also just a terrible time to sell. The commission that I will be paying will be about that 4.5%. And then you can see the net profit on this one will be just shy of, well, 39,000. I was going to say just shy of 40,000. So that does meet my needs. That met my 40,000 mark. However, it did not necessarily meet my return versus the ARV. It's only 12%. And my cash on cash return, especially because of that 6,000. If I didn't have that pesky 6,000, it would have been a lot closer to 200%, but it ended up being at 130% cash on cash return. So rules are meant to be broken. You will break your own personal rules as long as it doesn't get you too close into hot water. That's the big thing. And so it is a little, it's not an exact science. You're not going to be, they are numbers and they are factual numbers, but you do have to play with them a bit and see what is going to work for you and your investing strategy. Any questions before we go on to selling? Any questions about just about running through numbers? Think about those while I move on to our next section, but we are nearing the end. Probably only about another 5 minutes left. And then I will be giving my contact information. If you ever want to go over numbers on a one-on-one basis, just let me know and we can set up a time to have a quick call or Zoom meeting individually. But tips for selling your house. I always suggest you use an agent that knows the area. You want someone that is a specialist in the area that you are doing. Is yes, the interest rate that I had, that 12.99%, was going to the hard money lender. Different lenders are going to have different rates. It also depends on what they offer. Right now, the average rate is probably about 11.5 to 12%. The reason I use 13% is because that's the percentage that we charge at the company I work for. And the reason why we do charge a little bit of a premium is we do not require a down payment. Most lenders require a 10% or 15% down payment. And so you end up with more money invested in the property, but it also lowers the risk of the hard money lender. So they lower the rate accordingly. So just so you know, it's a great question to talk about. 13% is probably a decent deal if you are getting 100% financing. But if you're not, if you're having to put down 10%, you should probably be looking for around 11.5%, and probably 2 or 2.5 points is what you would need to know about. If you want to talk more about hard money, let me know. I have a whole presentation on hard money that I've done already for this class, but I can also just send you guys my presentation on that, and you can kind of look through it and just see how the different things work. But so use an agent that knows the area. I always suggest listing on a Wednesday or a Thursday. This is because a lot of agents that are working with buyers will set up the list of homes that they're going to visit on a Thursday or Friday so that they can go visit them on a Friday afternoon or Saturday. So, or over the weekend. So it's just, to me, I think it's good to have that listing be fresh on a Wednesday or Thursday, because the other thing is you don't want to get so many offers before you get to a weekend. I always want my property to be on the market for at least a full weekend before I accept an offer. And so part of that goes to, if you list on a Wednesday or Thursday, you're less likely to get those offers that are saying, hey, I'm going to give you this offer, but you have to give me an answer within 24 hours. If it's over the weekend, they're going to understand you probably won't get back to them until Monday. So that's the other kind of method of why I like to list on a Wednesday or Thursday. Be aggressive with your pricing. Does that mean to list high? No, I'm actually saying that on the opposite side. Be aggressively low on your pricing. You want to be under market. You want to find out what is the average, what is that ARV, and maybe list even a little bit below that. You want your property to sell quick. And we kind of talked about this earlier, holding costs versus getting a better price. And the thing to think about it is, let's say I have a $200,000 property, but I could maybe get $210,000 if I waited just one more month. And let's say my holding costs, which this isn't necessarily realistic for this price of a property, but let's say my holding costs were $5,000 a month. And I know that if I wait 1 month, I could get 210. I'm going to net 5,000 in profit, right? Well, let's say that same deal was also netting me even at the 200 price, that same deal is going to net me 40,000 in profit. We saw a lot of deals today that had a $40,000 profit range on them. So that means I was making $10,000 in profit a month. But now I'm making that 40,000 over 5 months. So now I'm making 8,000 a month. So it did lower. Well, I guess you're also making the extra 5,000. So we can get into the nitty gritty of math, but around $9,000 per month. So I'm making a little bit less per month and I'm holding out a little bit longer. I don't know if that's always the best idea. And the reason I say that is because you can't just look at your costs of profit individually. You need to look at your opportunity cost. If I had this property sold, would I go buy another property? Probably. And if I'm making $10,000 a month on a property, I have to include that cost to hold that property of $10,000 because I'd be making $10,000 on the next deal. Instead, I'm waiting to squeak out an extra $5,000 on this deal. And so that's why I think sometimes getting caught in the holding out for a better price is not always good when you consider the opportunity cost of whatever that next deal is going to bring. Figure out how much money are you making per month on your flips. And once you get that number, which probably will be somewhere in the $8,000 to $10,000 per month range, once you have that number, make sure you're considering that in your holding costs when you're looking to see, should I wait another month to try and get a better price? Because maybe it doesn't make sense when you consider the opportunity costs. So just something to think about. That was a question from earlier that we were talking about. Buy in winter, sell in summer. I clearly did not follow that. I bought the property that I have right now toward the end of summer, and now I'm stuck in winter having to sell it. Not happy about it. Over the last 3 years, the cycles in the market have been kind of flipped a bit. We typically would see a very big slowdown the week before Thanksgiving, all the way through at least Martin Luther King weekend in January. That's the second weekend in January. And this is because people just have so much other stuff going on. They have the holidays. It's cold outside, especially if you're in one of the northern states. It's just not an easy time to sell a house. So it's much better to buy in winter when sellers are more desperate and sell in summer. Sorry. I have a little bit of a cough I'm getting over. And so it's just something that we're seeing return this year finally. The last few years, we haven't seen those cycles, the annual cycles, just because the supply had been so low since COVID. But now that we're kind of exiting that period, the real estate markets are getting back to how they had been in the past. Stage the strange. If you have something weird in your house, stage it. If you have a weird room that looks just way too small to be a bedroom, put a crib in there, put like a little changing tray or changing dresser, whatever you want to call it, and make it show as a functional bedroom for someone. Put in a kid's bed, a small twin bed, to show that it's a functional bedroom. If you have a weird layout in your kitchen slash breakfast nook slash living area, maybe you need to put in, you can rent or use a staging company to put in a sectional couch that will divide up the room a little bit more. Put a table in. If the home has some unique features like that, stage it. It will help the buyers as they come in to see how they would live in there. Sorry. Does every house need to be staged? No, but if you have something funky going on, it's a good idea to stage it. Make sure your house pops with curb appeal. You want to make sure you have either that bright colored door, as long as it's tasteful and within the buyer's palette. Make sure that you have it cleaned up. Don't leave the house looking scruffy outside. That's not going to sell. You need to make sure that when they drive up to the house, their first impression, because that matters, that first impression is just, wow, look at that. Wow, I want to live there. You can't always affect other people's houses, but you can definitely affect yours. So make sure that yours pops. Set your house apart from others. Don't paint it the same color as the house on either side. Don't make the upgrades the exact same as every other house that's on the market right now. If every other house has granite, you need to have quartz. If every other house has laminate countertops, You need to have stone. You need to do something to set yours up just a little bit. It doesn't need to be with everything, but at least a few key features. You need to have that little step up. Yeah, we're still going to be trying to price below the median house, but we want our house to be a little bit above in appeal than the other homes on the market. Be open to creative offers. I always tell people, consider owner financing. You can go get a note on the property yourself, and then you can sell owner finance to someone else. Definitely check with your state's rules here in Texas. We can do that really easily 3 times a year. If I write a 4th note that year, I become a mortgage lender all of a sudden, and some of the rules change. So just make sure that you work with an attorney when you're open to creative offers, but think about creative things. If you're selling owner finance, you should be accepting a premium, at least a 5% premium on the price. And then also you're charging a premium on the interest. Maybe I'm paying 7% interest, but I'm going to charge them 10 or 11% interest. Develop relationships with title companies. It's always good to have a good title company in your back pocket. This is for the buy side. This is for the sell side. Just something to always consider. Something else that is good to know is open houses don't sell houses. Very rarely does an open house truly lead to someone walking in and seeing the house and wanting to make an offer on it. Most of the time, the open house is for the buyer's agent. The agent that you'll see in the house a lot of times isn't the listing agent. And that's because the person sitting in there represents buyers a lot of times. So they're finding out, oh, who's looking for a home? And they see random people walk in. Those are the people that are going to be going out and looking. And if they're not represented yet, it gives that agent that's sitting there a great opportunity for a lead. They're not there to sell your house. They're there to get leads. Just something to be aware of. Should I have a title company for buying and one for closing, or keep them one for both? I would keep one for both. I was worried that you're going to say, should you have a title company for buying? Yes, always close with a title company, and we'll talk about that in just a second. I'd probably keep it for both. The more business you bring them, the better. Most title companies in the United States are bound by the state on what they can charge. So the fee from one title company to the next is very minimal. There won't be a big difference. That's why when you go to a title company, they offer you soda, they offer you snacks, they have really comfortable seating. There's a nice TV showing HGTV in the lobby. They're doing it because those are the only few things that they can do to try and sway you to use them as lender or as the title company. They can't offer you a better rate. They can't do a lot of those things for you because it's just not allowed. It's a highly regulated thing. Some places use title companies, some states use closing attorneys. In the end, they function the same. They're going to give you title insurance. Sorry again. So I would suggest trying to work with the same title company as often as possible. And the final thing, and I deal with this a lot as a lender, breathe. I have so many borrowers that list the home and they don't get as many showings as they expected the first week. Just breathe. Yes, I will definitely leave this up for a moment, but you just want to make sure you understand it's going to take some time, and the right buyer isn't always going to be there right away. It doesn't mean after the first week you need to drop your price substantially. It just means you need to take some time. Always have your listing agent always ask for feedback. I know we're getting a discount, so the listing agent may not be out there marketing the property as much. Marketing a property does not go very far, honestly. Once it's on the MLS, it's really up to the buyer's agent to find it. But breathe and understand that it's going to take some time, and that's okay. But just know that if you've followed those other steps, you should be in a very good spot. Don't worry too much about your pricing. Understand that your agent may want to price the home higher than what you, the investor, want to price it at. That's because you understand that opportunity cost and the fact that you want to get it sold so that you can move on to the next one. But still, just understand that it'll take some time to get through everything. I hope you're able to take a picture of this, because I am going to move on to the last slide because I did promise that I'd keep it to an hour, and I'm right now at 59 minutes and 30 seconds. This is just on hard money lending. Honestly, don't, if you want to know more about lending, just contact me. We don't lend in every state. So feel free still to contact me, even if we don't lend in your state. I would be more than willing to go over when you get offers from other lenders, if it's a good offer for your deal or a bad offer for your deal. Depending on your state, I might be able to help you look at ARVs. It all depends on where you're at. I don't have access to every single state right now. But again, most of you that are here are going to be in Utah, Colorado, Texas, Florida, the states that Real Estate IQ works in. And like I also said, they're working on getting their own comping tools, so they will have that comping tool available to you guys to use as well shortly. But if you want, please scan this QR code. This is just my contact information, and you're welcome. If you, as you go through it and save it, it actually asks if you'd like to reply with your contact information. Feel free to do that. I'd love to reach out. You can see both my cell phone number and my office number on there, as well as my email address. Feel free to shoot me a text, give me a call if you want to go over any of the slides that we talked about, or if you have a deal specifically that you want to go over, we can talk about that. I can even share with you my sheet that I use. That was the sheet, the quick analysis sheet that I was able to plug those numbers into to see what my anticipated profit would be and show me what the percentage of the ARV is. It does all that calculation automatically. You only have to fill in like 5 blanks on it, and it'll automatically calculate everything else for you. But I hope this was worthwhile for you guys. I appreciate you if you stuck with this the whole time.